Nice tan. Okay, we are hereby called to order at 5:07. Thank you all for showing up. TIF discussion and action on the minutes that you have. Your motion or anything that you need to have corrected.
Make a motion to accept the minutes from March.
Second discussion. All in favor? Number 3, TIF account balance update. It wasn't in our packet.
It wasn't, and it should have been, and it's not on my lap here.
Oh, sorry. Pass over and I'll be right there with you.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, we can't move too far anyway. So the next discussion, well, let me just explain about Brandy. Ireland is not here. She is no longer on the TIF board. And basically, if you know of anybody who might be interested in becoming a TIF member, have them see Richard. That's all I know.
So your TIF account balance, just so you know, there was a lower amount that came in this year because of our certified ratio. Having to do with the total value of our personal property and real estate, land and buildings versus the state expectation. So that then reduced it, and I wanted to pull that amount for me. Here we go. So that pulled that back. So there is less money in the pot to work with this year, but it's still over 100,000, and it has been paid. So this year's deposit was 118,500.
Any notable reasons that it was less?
So we have an agreement with Summit Natural Gas. It's a regional agreement where they value based upon the length.
Okay.
And then that $11 million ballpark then is tied to our percent of state valuation. So we're at 91%, 92% this year. So that gets reduced by 8%.
Okay.
And then that's how it gets applied. It's the same. It's really complicated and kind of nasty. Okay. But it's the same way that we value personal property tax, your equipment and machinery and things like that. So the thing with that, and we'll kind of bounce into it later, the revolving loan update, but that money's not really moving. So you won't probably need to infuse that anymore. And then I do have a little bit of cleanup to do with finance, but you're still looking at probably $550,000 to $600,000 and then future expenses.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, our current balance is about 550,000, less expenses, less current out expenses that haven't been paid that have been approved.
Correct.
And do we have an idea of what that is about?
Right now I'm looking at approximately 125 to 30,000.
Okay.
That's budgeted out. And then theoretically the sidewalk project, if that goes through, is 500,000. So it would sweep the rest of that account. But what I need to flush out is there's still an allocation of almost $40,000 for the public swim area, which is something that we've closed out now for a project. So that money, I just need to cancel that out and put it back is to just I earmark it, so to say.
So we're going to bounce back to this a little bit later, but how much money do we really have to spend then?
So
after you take out the sidewalk project and outstanding bills?
Not having a hard and fast number, I think you're looking at probably, if you take the sidewalk project away, you're looking at probably 100,000. But you'll have another infusion next year in the middle of that sidewalk project. So, you know, you're leveraging, you're working on it, your paycheck to paycheck. How's that?
Okay.
You just got a new paycheck.
So it's close, but it's closer this year than it has been in the past because
we're finally spending some of the money.
Okay.
You know, you've taken on some larger project. That 100,000 that went to revolving loan was pretty substantial. You've got, I say $50,000 into the maintenance building down to Ashland Park. So that goes pretty quick. The surveillance project, at Usula Park in the swim dock, that was a couple good knocks. So,
yeah. Any questions?
Just, should we anticipate that 118 continuing to go
down?
No, I think that the assessors met last week and yes, it would go down, but we're gonna have another adjustment next year. So this year you saw it was 20% across the board. So your house and land value went up 20%, everybody's house and land value went up 20%. So your values went up, your mill rate came down, and your taxes slightly increased because we need more money to operate. They're intending to do that again next year to prevent this from going down. Whether or not it'll be enough to keep it from going down, I'm not sure. It'll all depend on what the state comes in at after they look at our sales and everything else.
And then the sidewalk project, what's the situation on that?
So the sidewalk project was initially sent to us with a budget of about $200,000.
Right.
And with construction costs the way that they are, it's just inflated. And so now our local share last time was estimated at $533,600. And that was inclusive of all of the lighting and the extension to the Sewell Park.
Okay. And where is it? The status of it?
Late design phase, I'll say. They could have gone to construction, but I think a lot of just resource allocation with DOT because we've allowed them to capture the engineering on the project as opposed to the town having to take that on. It's a strategic planning move.
Yep.
But I mean, we've been planning, you're right on Main Street, so a year and a half.
Anyway.
They've come and surveyed front yards, they've looked at utilities, they've looked at trees and setbacks and sent all of that those notices to the folks on the impacted sections. And I'm surprised if we don't break ground on the lower end next year. But it's supposed to be the lower end, it may be on this top end with the intersection updates. But again, that's why part of the reason why the state's overseeing the project, so that it interfaces with the intersection with the Route 2 repave project, things like that.
Okay.
But there's nothing to say if costs don't continue to go up in that time frame that we wouldn't incur those costs, right? Like, it's not like a locked in or anything like that.
No, that's budgetary, it's got contingency in it, it's got about a 20% contingency in it, which is where you wanna be. You don't wanna spend it, but you wanna budget for that. And it's also possible that you see things soften. You know, interest rates go down, might affect cost of asphalt positively, who knows? Wages are wages, so that's gonna rise as fast as it will the first 2 years.
Since I've been doing this, which is probably quite a few years, I've never felt a pinch, but it appears that our money is, I won't say running out, but we have to be a little more judicious with our money, would you say?
I mean, I'll say yes and no. I think that TIF committee's gone and solicited a lot of activity. I think that when you looked at facade awards in the past, I think it was the money's here, let's do it. And maybe it wasn't a fully exhaustive cost and benefit analysis. It was just an investment in business. And now I think you're looking more as what's the return on an investment?
Okay. Okay.
If you spent this down every year, great, right? But
yeah. Do we want money for a rainy day? Yeah.
Right. I mean, is this the fund that you want to hold on to for a rainy day?
Right. Yeah.
That's what you focus.
And does the select board feel, because oftentimes a project comes up and the select board defaults to us. You know, if we don't have the money, are they gonna look at other, you know, is that feasible or are we that account? Like.
So in part, I think is the fair answer.
Okay.
We saw the ballot measures that we just had in July where it was the new sidewalk equipment and the property purchase both passed. That was $300,000-ish. They could have come to TIF and knocked on your door and they didn't. They said, no, that's for more direct economic impact. Let's look at surplus. And so that's why they went to surplus for that. So I think they understand also that, you know.
So potentially the budget would be crafted differently to take that burden off of.
Right.
Any other questions on number 3, TIF account balance update?
We'll hammer this down and I'll get you out plus or minus 1,000 number in the next week or so.
We'll move on to number 4. New business, A, discussion of Usula Park roadside signage proposal, which is this sign, which is this one that you have here.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have a price quote for you today. I had asked for one, I thought I was gonna get one, and with things being the way that they are, I don't have one for you. But I will then solicit your initial feedback as to what you think, so you can see the current sign proportionally on the left side of your paper. That sign in the rotten, it's wonderful and it's done its time, I think. And so I went to Bry Designs in Oakland, who did all of your gateway signage back in 2017 now, and asked him to come up with something that matched the rest of what we've got. And then also on the bottom part, removable plates.
So those are removable, that was my question.
Yeah, so we can swap them out with seasonal things or blank plates or no plates, new plates. Different colored plates, you know, if you have a Usula Days Labor Day weekend, maybe you want that to be green instead of black or something like that. It's far from ideal. I know a lot of folks want to see electronic signboard there, but it's an electrical drop.
Well, and that's a lot, that would be a lot to put on an electrical sign to try to read as you're driving by anyway.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, so the stationary would certainly.
Right. So pretty much that's what he's come up with. I've asked him for the price of that sign as it is, plus the average price of a small and a large panel with lettering on it. And then the installation, and I also asked for a new frame. We, put in the posts. If we want to treat them. Don't, get them gone. Do it right.
Would we use the existing posts? It appears that the pictures say that we do.
The pictures say that we do. In my last communication 2 or 3 ago, asked him to price it with replacement.
Because the sign is not perpendicular to the road, which makes it a little problematic, not problematic, but it doesn't look quite as, it could be better situated to draw more attention.
Agreed.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it would look nicer if it had the white sleeves on the post. It would be more eye-catching than just the pressure treated. If you have the white vinyl sleeves and make it look like it's.
Oh, that ties it in with all the other signs.
Exactly, and it makes it look a little nicer, a little more dressed up.
And how did the park committee like it? Because you said in the
They're all
minutes,
on board with it.
they're all set.
Yeah, they like the ability to switch out what's on the signs.
And will the state boat launch sign be reinstalled? Because, so that blue sign that says state, and you see them everywhere. So when you drive down the road, you want to put your boat in, you see that sign, you know you can put your boat in. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That should be there because I think it's important for, it's a universal sign. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I mean, if we have paddleboard rentals, kayak rentals, and other signs, we still use it, but it could be put on the back of it.
Who did you say was doing the sign?
Bry Designs.
Bry?
Bry, BRIDESIGNS. Yep.
They've done a lot of the stuff for us.
Yeah. They've done all of the gateway signage, our town line signs. And they're also, I think, working now with the Sportsman's Association on the, remember we did a semi-matching for them for their trail signage, and their trail signage is supposed to match the signage as well. So the Norridgewock signage on the trails will be green, and actually Fairfield, Madison will have blue backed, but matching ours.
Nice. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
So this is silly, but I really love the frog and like the association with the Usula Park. And it doesn't seem like there's a way to integrate that in there, but it seems like historically that's always been. Again, if it's not a big deal for the Parks Committee, it probably doesn't matter, but I just.
There's no reason we can't, the panel that says Usula Park Fun Days can't have the frog on.
There you go. Thank you, Joe.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I know, I appreciate
And
it.
there's no reason that that panel can't be a more permanent panel to say first month Labor Day.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Then it's
Absolutely.
always there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Homeowners will put it- homeowners
so
will-
easy.
I don't know why, but.
Homeowner
That
frog
sign-
races.
Yeah, right?
Frog races.
That sign was conditioned, it used to say donated by Scott Page.
Scott Page.
Oh, okay,
And it fell and it ended up behind Public Works,
gotcha.
rotted,
Yeah.
and then I took a picture of it and had
Oh, you wouldn't, okay.
then replicate the old sign the best I
Gotcha,
could
gotcha,
to,
See, you just got me all excited about a sign that doesn't even exist anymore and I've never even noticed.
this is real, this here.
Oh, this is real, oh, this is real, okay,
The
okay.
one that was there before, it was, instead of proudly maintained, it said it was proudly donated by Scott.
Gotcha,
or something to
gotcha.
that effect, yeah.
Okay.
Do you have like, you wanna give us a ballpark, 20 grand? 30 grand? 500?
Goodness. Well, I hope it wouldn't be more than 10.
10, okay, I don't know, I'm asking. Yeah, I would say 10 would be reasonable.
What was the average of your Norridgewock sign heads anyway, when you were doing the welcome to
When we
Norridgewock?
paid that whole package in 2017, it was in the ballpark of, it was less than 20,000.
Oh, all of this.
But that was, what did you say?
All the, yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
When you come into town.
yeah, significant.
I like it, it says proudly maintained by the town of Norridgewock Parks Committee. One, you then know that the facility is town owned, and I think that's good to know. Good.
If you have any other ideas for panels that would go there, let me know.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on that? Number 2, discussion and action on electrical upgrades to a super park and vendor. That's this and the picture.
Yes.
And you want to speak to that, Richard?
Sure. So we had 8 weeks of music series down in the park this summer, July and August. And one of the things that came up time and time again, A, from vendors, but B, from people that were in attendance, was they all need power. And when folks don't have power, they use generators, and most of them were pretty good, but if they had the ability to hook up, obviously, then you wouldn't have the generators, and then you'd be able to hear more music. So I went out and got a price quote. Short Circuit's pretty much been our go-to commercial contractor for electrical work. And he's been fair in his price and estimate. So I went and said, okay, look, this is where we would situate these 50 amp services. And if we were gonna do that, I don't know if you've seen the panel at the park, but it needs to be upgraded. And this would be the total that would allow you to drop in the 350 amp service. It would also prepare in a way the upgrade potentially needed if we wanted to put additional electricity out to the gazebo in the future. But this would put one hookup for say food truck or ice cream truck next to the current building that's down there, and then it would put 2 across the way towards the river.
So why aren't we doing one at the gazebo now?
Well, it's not about 50 amp at the gazebo, it's just the potential need. There's already lines run out there, there's only 2 outlets. So if we want to have more than the 2 outlets in the future, if we put in a new, if there's a new gazebo there someday.
Yeah.
Then there may be added lighting, underneath the gazebo or whatnot. It's just that the panel is pretty much at capacity right now, so that needs to be upgraded, which is why you're getting the $10,000 number instead of.
Will they do earthwork?
They're gonna take care of all of the underground lines.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would they reseed? Would that be part of the part of the?
It's supposed to be, when they did our underground connection to that building, they did.
Okay.
If not, something Public Works will go behind.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question about the swim area. Can the town remove the lily pads that are there, or are we not allowed to touch those?
I believe we're allowed to, and it's just a matter of getting the right tool that has been offered to us and getting people down there to do it.
Uh-huh.
And so this year being year 1 and the strain on resources, it didn't happen, but we're committed to doing it next spring and keeping an eye on it.
Okay. I have another question about the park. It wasn't, I don't see it written.
So any other questions on this? Yeah. go ahead.
Yes, I do know. How have the canoe and kayak rentals and paddleboard, how much has the town made on that this year?
0 so far. We had initial indicators that we were gonna be well into the thousands for rental revenue, but what then came after the fact was a lot of it was testing, and when we have an issue, they go down and they generate 4 or 5 different transactions. There's been maintenance hiccups. I think we're gonna be in the ballpark of a couple $1,000s back. So if you're at that pace, you're at 13 years before you get your payoff.
Right,
But we didn't have a full season. We had a lot of hiccups to work through coming out of the gate.
You're still working the bugs out of it.
I was down there once and people couldn't get in.
Right, and then we had them left in the park, we had them hauled, different places, and it just is, there's some hiccups.
I've seen people in the river with them,
Yeah.
doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, right, for sure.
Yeah.
so we're not tied, are we keeping them for 5 years or? just-
Yeah, so we paid upfront lump sum,
That's what I thought.
and so then it's up to us, and we don't pay any more money. All we do is continue to collect money.
Right,
We collect 50% of revenues.
right,
Yeah.
right, but those will be down there for 5 years.
Could be down there as long as the town of Norridgewock will.
Longer,
Yeah.
depending on how things go.
And where will they go this winter?
They'll be picked up and they'll be taken off-site for indoor storage.
And one other thing. Are we still gonna have a unit for people who have kayaks to lock them in
You mean a
place?
thing?
Or
I
should we
forgot all
buy
about, I'll be
one?
honest, I forgot all about it.
No, should we buy one or?
No, they make them up and, yeah. So we did agree to do that, a kayak holder. That's what you're asking for.
Yeah,
I thought that the committee, I'd have to look back at notes, but I thought the committee backed off from that when this presented itself, because then it became a private watercraft storage. And people would just leave their canoes and kayaks there. And how do you patrol it and who
well, we
maintains the
would have
liability?
both. And.
But if you had a canoe or a kayak and you just left it there and locked it up all summer,
I see what you're saying, yeah.
and that was one of the things that we looked back and forth at.
I'll
Because I know that we give you an initial appropriation, then you decided you were gonna have surgery.
Right, that,
And then
yeah, you were
we
not well.
upped the number on the amount, right? And I wanna say it all got tabled until we saw how this went. But there were concerns about liability and.
So let's, I'll put it on the agenda, and we'll review it back in the spring, and they can be built immediately. There's a place up in Hamden that builds them, so for about $1,000, so.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Just because we're watching our dollars closer now, is there any reason that this wouldn't be a parks expense? I know they don't have it in their budget because everyone cuts their budget, but.
Yeah, so it could be, they don't have room in their budget, and they just had a reserve account finally established last year.
Yeah.
Candidly, it wasn't an easy sell,
No,
They
I
wanted to
remember.
have it.
I remember.
so.
Okay, just maybe
It could
something
be,
to bring up when we're talking about budgets.
And it could be, if it doesn't go through here, then I'm sure it'll be something that will be incorporated in the request for next year.
How much of the signage would TIF be paying for, the whole thing?
But for the Lucille Park sign,
Yeah,
that would be the request.
yeah, okay.
Approximately how many people attended the
The music night?
concerts, yeah.
So we had a low of about 200 people,
Wow.
and we had a high of just about 500.
Wow.
That's awesome.
It was seemed very well attended. I only missed 1 week and it was.
Yeah. We didn't get rained out once.
Yeah.
And
Lucky.
it's really just deceiving. You look around, and we got the clicker, they had a clicker, so they're trying to keep track of people coming through the door and because that matters when we go and ask for money for somebody else for next year, how many people came through.
Yeah.
No, it was great. And the first
And
2
that
or
doesn't
3
count,
were,
does that count the party boats that were sitting out in the river
No.
listening? So there was anywhere from 2 to 4 party boats out there every week as well.
That's a nice event. So what I hear, in order to enhance the experience, the proposal is to spend $10,450 to put 3 50 amp services for those and provide and update the box. Is that correct? And does the board have a motion or any more comments?
I make a motion that we do it.
Second. I'll second. I'll second. Yep. Is there any more discussion? I think personally, I think that this is good. It sets a tone that we're there for, the enjoyment of everybody from our community, so.
I do have one more question. Will there be any lighting on this, even if it's solar powered?
It would be solar powered,
Okay.
and it very likely would be downward.
Mhm.
So we're only voting on the electric. Right.
Mhm.
Okay, all in favor? And it's unanimous. You never went online, by the way.
I did, I didn't go hear you, right? Well, your lucky day. It'll be on YouTube tomorrow.
Four C, discussion and action on the proposed community engagement position. Wow, let's talk about that.
No, I don't. So the select board's been looking at different positions, goals of the town. And candidly, it started with recreation, where we have one recreation director who serves overseeing 3 sports, knowing that there's a desire for that individual to transition out of that type of a role. And how do you fill it? And it's next to impossible to fill it. So then you start looking bigger picture as to where do we have gaps in current services and potential opportunities in services. So it then turns from a Parks and Rec position into a larger picture that has a bunch of different roles. So it would be the primary liaison with the Parks Committee for your events, your public events, your music, your sewer days, stroll. We're talking community programs now that would be organized by, say, a rec department or whatever auspice of the town you want to use for a label, but in nearby towns, you'll see a rec department that has a trip to the firework fair, and it's no cost or low cost, and they just work. They get you there on a charter bus. So those are opportunities that the board sees for the community, knowing that there's a lot of service for the young, and how do we balance that out with everybody. And then things like if you're in the parks and you're in rec, then you're seeing facilities that have needs, and so that would be in all of our facilities, identifying building needs, not necessarily doing it or even coordinating it, but punch listing, building washing, rotten board, this or that, working with our contractors to do groundskeeping, to make sure they're compliant, things like that. It's a pretty high and low job, I'll say, where it's different hours shifting here and there. And so that's why it's been structured as an hourly job. We started at salary, but for a variety of different reasons, moved away from it. And then public outreach. So probably serve with you guys, work closely with you guys to see some of your goals through, and through the community engagement of the parks and the rec and community programming that inherently ties in businesses. So there's the dream that eventually it would be grant writing or identifying grants and things like that. But then there's also the just the value of having somebody as a point of contact for community engagement. Right now, all that's on me.
Having been the rec director for almost 20 years, from the early 80s to the beginning of the 20s, the rec department is a huge time commitment. And I completely appreciate that. Incorporating community engagement events, I like the way that's phrased, new word, would be really helpful and beneficial to the town. However, is it a town position? Is it a staff position? So I see they would be they would be eligible for retirement benefits through the main state retirement system?
No, they would be eligible through 457, which is what everybody else is. Only our firefighters are mainstay retirement.
Okay.
So like health insurance, like, I mean, this is pretty low wage, right? So you're like 47 grand if you worked a 40-hour week. State minimum wage or state minimum salary is gonna go to 58, I believe, next year. So like, pretty light.
Right, so the number was necessarily backed into, with the total salary, if you will, divided by weeks, divided by number of hours expected in a week, so right now it's 32.40.
Yeah.
And then put that into an hourly wage because of the exempt salary bump that's coming in
Right.
in 2025. So that's where that figure came from. So in essence, it would likely be $22-ish an hour, which they thought was fair to start. Select board.
And the town can absorb this as part of their budget for the rec department, park department, is that correct? That's why they're coming to TIF?
The board has asked TIF to consider this, A, for feedback on role of the position. If you would like to see the position, regardless of funding mechanism. And then if there was an interest in TIF of funding some, or what extent you'd be willing to fund. And that came from back when there was the economic development position that TIF had committed at the time to pay up to $40,000 a year. And so there was a discussion about this connecting in a way to that position to see what you folks had thought. But the first question is, what do you guys think is the volunteer board of 7 that work most closely with economic development in the community? And how does this play for you? What do you see as gaps, or what maybe needs to be moved up the list or down the list?
Super excited about the role. I think it has, huge, again, I think we're certainly lit on compensation, I feel. And I also feel like, like how many meetings do you have a week, and each of those is at least an hour long, like this isn't like an ideal schedule for people, right? I would say, I don't know, maybe like a mom could make it work, but because they could do a drop off and a pickup and then come to meetings after that, but I'm just trying to think about the person that would be interested in the job.
A lot of things have changed over the years, and volunteerism is one of those things, and not sure why. Obviously, in order to make for a household to make a living, both the parents have to work, which wasn't always the way it used to be, good or bad. And unfortunately, this might be a reality that we just have to face if we want to provide opportunities for local residents to have some downtime, whether it be a concert or a stroll or youth basketball or a trip to Freiburg Fair, that comes at a cost. I think we're fortunate to be thinking about something like this and not trying to find enough money to pay our bills down at Norridgewock. I would say that I would personally like to pursue this further. However, I don't think it would be a position that we could fully fund. But I think that it would be a position that would be good to be part of, and maybe on a 1 year at a time, assess it after 9 months to see if that's something we want to pursue for another year. What I don't want to do is I don't want to open a new position in the town of Norridgewock and then 5 years from now say, oh my word, why did we do this? I don't know, it's just my thought. So I worked for the town of Skowhegan as the rec director for 3 years. And it's a thankless job. Thankless job, and requires a lot of meetings outside of, like you said, outside of parameters. So pretty much every day, especially during the seasons of sports seasons, you're gonna be opening the gym, you're gonna be blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So my feeling is that I would like to continue to pursue this, and I don't know who are we talking to? Who are we collaborating with
In terms of
this type of a position?
nobody at this point in time.
Nobody?
We're trying to get our house in order internally before we
Okay.
do anything like that.
Oh, I don't mean who would, I mean just the position itself, even considering posting a position like this.
So it started with the select board wanting to see some, well, no, it started with the rec committee, actually, wanting to
Yep.
take on a bigger role and think, well, can you really straight face justify that for rec?
Yep.
Can you really straight face justify it for parks and rec? Where can you do that honestly and have a defined need that's not just creating a new job to create a new job? And that's kind of how we've come into this, is compiling things that are closely related and then somewhat closely related.
I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to. I would be happy to be part of that process, having had the experience both in Norridgewock and Skowhegan, and I don't have anything else to do because I'm retired. Anyway, and I know the town quite well, so I would be happy to be part of that discussion. So I don't know if you're gonna put people together. I would be happy to work with recreation people, park people to have a conversation. Because then I also bring the TIF element into this too, so. And you too, she raised her
I
hand.
do. Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
So, any more discussion on this? Or does anybody want to make a motion? I don't know what the motion would
What the
be.
motion would be.
I guess my next question would be like, how does the budget work? It seems like we're taking, this person would be in charge of funding from different departments, and how would that kind of? I mean, obviously you do that, so you, I mean, it can be done, but I'm just wondering like what.
It would get booked to one department, which I know is not the 100% way to do it, right? We proportionally pull it from here and there. Mine just comes from one pot. Finance comes from another pot.
So,
It comes from
sorry.
this pot, but then it also comes from airport and sewer and things like that.
But that's just salary, that's not like they're gonna need some kind of operating budget, or are they just gonna kind of operate that?
I think it pulls out of the respective budgets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they would kind of manage those budgets.
Correct. I think the prime areas that you're looking at are your parks and your rec, and then thinking constructively about future goals.
Yep.
And then if you were gonna do a bus trip and that was gonna be subsidized, then that would get built into rec. Or it would just fall into the auspices of that.
And probably even the music, a lot of these venues, a lot of these engagement events in the community could fall under one category, which would be parks and recreation. Is that what they do?
We budget them all, we budget parks and rec separately now, just because they're very different things, really. This person ideally bring them together. And rec has its own reserve, parks has its fundraising branch, now a reserve branch, so.
And did you say the town and the TIF committee would pay that position jointly? Did I?
Well, no, my question today was about the job description, what you guys thought, take away or add, move around, but then also what your palette would be for considering funding some of this position, or what part of the position. So John said he wants to be involved, but certainly not going to fully fund it.
Right. Yeah, I think with some creative financing, you could probably put together enough money to get someone to do the job. Whether you could find a person at $20 an hour to do the job, a good qualified person, you know, someone who has the energy and enthusiasm to do it is more important than the education, really.
And this person would also require an office for all of this, and that space would be.
Yeah, little
Here,
building
somewhere.
right out there.
Largely floated. Just with the nature of the work, the consensus has been that it would largely float. They would be set up here, it would be, because of the building involvement, the grounds involvement, it's likely that they could be up to public works for a few hours, and it would really be somebody that brings things together, but also a remote employee. It would be one of the only employees that we would have, the only employee that we would have aside from myself that would have that ability to work remote. And that's in large part to offset the inconvenience of evenings.
Right.
It might be that just the fact that rec is a common example, but we've got an evening full of games, we've got a weekend tournament. Well, guess what? They can set up in the shack, they've got internet, they've got electricity, and they could do stuff all weekend and get it done. So you never know where you'd be working.
So we're gonna leave this to be continued, and I would be happy to be part of the organ or of the conversation.
Position development.
Yeah, position development.
There we
Award
go.
discussion. Is that enough for
You
the?
applying for another job?
Building
Your
and-
resume building over here, folks.
Any other discussion on this?
Just that if you have any other ideas about it, here or from the public, send them on over. And I will take your thoughts back to the select board.
Okay.
Next week.
And I live over on Bridge Street.
Yes. I heard that.
Number 5, continued business revolving loan fund update.
So as you know, you authorized the deposit, recommended the deposit, and the board approved $100,000 into this loan fund at SCDC. They have started to advertise it here and there, not necessarily aggressively. I haven't really seen it. If I found it, it's because I went to find it. And so you can see that there's a $15,000 loan to Main Labs, which is right here on Main Street, for a new piece of testing equipment, which costs over $300,000, but it would expand their capacity and hire additional staff. So that did go through. I know there's a county funding proposal that was helping that, and so it looks like things are moving in the right direction, and that should be done as of last point of contact. And there are no changes there. So 15,000 is the only thing out.
So 15 is the only thing we have out.
Yep.
Any questions on that? Any other business that anybody would like to bring up?
I just have a couple of questions. How financially, what did the music in the park, does that attribute anything to any of the town's businesses? I mean, as far as where'd money go from that? I know some of it for the gazebo fund, or what were they raising any money for? And secondly, what did Usula bring in? Usula days.
Oh, man. So the Usula Park Music Series is self-sustaining. There was a grant from the Franklin Savings Bank Charitable Foundation, which is not their name, but it's their charitable foundation, community foundation. They made a grant of $5,000 to Town of Norridgewock Parks Committee for the premier sponsorship of the event. So that took care of all of the performance fees. And with some learning, we had somebody take care of all the booking and marketing and everything else last year that actually cost us more than what we had paid for the acts. So we parted ways with them, and that became my job. And so that money was then allowed to go into add 20% across the board to all bands. What they told us was their fee. We put an extra 20% onto them. They didn't ask for it. They didn't know until they got the check. It's kind of a tip because folks maybe aren't, and that's because we don't have it. We haven't had it before. People don't know that, you go up and you drop them a 5 or a 10 or something in music, right? So we recognize that, and we want them to keep coming back. So what we cleared off from that wasn't much. I would say it was under 1,000, but I don't have that number hard and fast for you. Because we had the extra money, and because the money that was left over was because we were picking up slack, they decided that they wanted some merch. And so you saw Town of Norridgewock koozies, fans, backpacks, frisbees, and those were distributed over the course of those weeks. And then some residual was at Usula Days. 50/50 proceeds went into their reserve account, and they are trying to fundraise for a new gazebo. They came with a new gazebo, and of course they had my support, but they didn't have board and committee support. Everybody wants a plan, this futuristic plan of the park, and the fact is that if you want that, then you can really hire an engineer that's familiar with the space, the topography, and you're gonna pay out 50.
Pay a lot this way.
And so the Parks Committee's kind of said, thanks, but no thanks. And so they're gonna make private efforts to secure the funding for the gazebo. Don't know when that will be, but they're patient folks and they're working hard towards it. Usula Days has been in the last, I've done 8 of them, so 7 years. That is, a moneymaker, if you will. By the time we sell sponsorships and whatnot, it's usually a plus up when you put into reserve account to pay for larger expenses. So, the portable speaker, what the Bose speaker that they had this year was $1,500, I think is what it was, and that's not possible within the scope of their regular budget. So we was continue to request, I think, 3,000 for Usula Days and 2,000 for the music series. That's what gets expended first, and then the private money that comes in from businesses goes into a special revenue account, so that money that comes in stays with that cost. So if you bought ad space on the back of a t-shirt, that money's not going into the general fund, that money stays with that Parks Committee for future, and it's Usula Days, but it's their money's put together. It's the Parks Committee. It's fluid in terms of Usula Days, the music series or whatnot. Working. So probably Usula Days this year was expensive. If they put $1,000 into their reserve account, because of that, I'd be surprised. Because of the golf cart, because of the added wildlife components, performers, more performers, just a lot of different costs. Trying different things out.
Any other business? Seeing none, we are so adjourned. 5:50. Thank you, everyone.